Here are the Richesses of the Spirit, by Charles Fillmore. Prosperity, according to Webster, is progress or gain in something good or desirable, successful progress, or the achievement of a desired goal. Prosperity doesn't mean the same thing for two people. For the wage earner, a few extra dollars in their weekly wage might seem like wonderful prosperity, as it signifies an improvement in their family's comfort and well-being. The person dedicated to great enterprises views prosperity in broader terms and doesn't consider themselves prosperous unless things come to them in large quantity. Between these extremes, there are many ideas about prosperity, clearly showing that prosperity does not lie in the possession of things, but in the recognition of abundance, in the knowledge of excess, open to an inexhaustible warehouse of all that is good and desirable in God's grand thought. There is no thought of lack in God's grand thought, and such a thought has no rightful place in your mind. It is your birthright to be prosperous, no matter who you are or where you are. Jesus told all men to seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto them. This does not mean that belonging to a particular church will make you prosperous, as righteousness is not in accordance with any particular religious belief, but in the law of right thinking, regardless of creed, dogma, or religious form. Plunge into the thought of prosperity, and you shall demonstrate prosperity. Cultivate the habit of thinking of present abundance everywhere, not only in forms of imagination, but also in external forms. Jesus made no distinction between the two as if there was enmity between them. He said, "Render unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's." Set things in their right relationship, the spiritual first and the material afterwards, each in its place, and give to each its due. Firstly, realize that prosperity is not entirely a matter of capital or environment, but a condition caused by certain ideas that have been allowed to reign in consciousness. When these ideas change, conditions change despite the environment and all appearances, which must also change to conform to the new ideas. People who suddenly become rich without building a consciousness of prosperity quickly part with their money. Those born and raised in wealth generally have abundance all their lives, even if they never make an effort to earn a dollar for themselves. This is because ideas of abundance are so tightly woven into their thought atmosphere that they are an integral part of themselves. They have consciousness of prosperity where there is no thought of lacking life's necessities. Sometimes we are asked if we advocate the accumulation of wealth. No, wealth accumulation as commonly understood is futile unless it stems from a rich consciousness. We advocate instead the accumulation of rich ideas, useful, constructive ideas beneficial to the well-being of all humanity. The external manifestation of wealth may or may not follow, but the supply of all needs will occur because the man of rich ideas has faith in a power that provides for all and never fails. He may not have a dollar more, but his ideas are meritorious, and he has confidence, a condition that cannot help but draw money to further him. That is true wealth, not an accumulation of money, but access to an inexhaustible resource upon which one can depend at any time, to meet any just demand. When a person has this consciousness of wealth, there is no need to hoard gold, stocks, bonds, or other assets to ensure future supply. Such a person can be very generous with their wealth without fear of exhausting it, because their ideas will keep them in constant touch with abundance. Those who think to accumulate material wealth, a predominant thought in today's world, are unbalanced. They fear losing these riches, making their existence precarious. Their prosperity rests on a mistaken idea of the source of wealth and ultimately leads to disaster. The sin of wealth does not lie in possession, but in the love of money, a material selfishness that leads to the impoverishment of the soul. It is not criminal to be rich, nor is it a virtue to be poor, as some reformers would have one believe. The sin lies in hoarding wealth and in preventing its free flow to all those in need. Those who turn away from wealth by working usefully to contribute to the well-being of the masses are the salvation of the country. Thankfully, many in this country have a consciousness of prosperity. If we all had a consciousness of poverty, famines would be as common here as in India or China. Millions in those lands are trapped in perpetual poverty of thought and suffer from want in all its forms, from birth to the grave. The burden of thought of poverty reverberates upon the earth, so that year after year it withholds its produce, and many people die of hunger. The universal mind controls all nature and holds all its products. The earth is the Lord's, and its fullness is a great truth. The insignificant and personal man uses all his cunning to gain control of nature's products, but he is always beaten in the end. Only the universal man of the Spirit is in unquestionable possession, and the Father says to him, "All that is mine is yours." Jesus had no earthly possessions, and evidently no money, as the apostles carried campaign funds. He did not even burden himself with a suitcase, as Diogenes did, and had nowhere to lay his head. Yet, he was always offered the finest welcome. He considered everything he needed as belonging to him. The invisible ethers supplied the banquet, from which he distributed food to thousands of people. He was rich in every sense because he had consciousness of prosperity and demonstrated that the earth, with all its fullness, belongs to the Lord, whose righteous children are heirs and possessors of all things. Anxiety must be eliminated, and the perfect abandon of the son to nature adopted. When this attitude is added to the relation of unlimited resources, the divine law of prosperity is fulfilled. Imagination is a wonderful creative power. It builds all things out of the soul substance. When you combine it with faith, you make things as real as those that God creates, for man is a co-creator with God. Whatever you form in your mind and have faith in becomes something substantial. Therefore, be careful in what you put your faith. If it is in material forms, in shadows that vanish as soon as your mental support is removed from them, you are building a temporary substance that will pass and leave you with nothing. Put your faith in the real, or as Jesus said to his disciples, have faith in God. Each person's true quest is for God. They may think they seek something else, but ultimately they must admit they seek God because, once they have felt His presence within them, they are deeply aware that only God can fill the place where we meet God. This place is known as the Spirit, the deepest of the soul, the kingdom of heaven within us. However, it is not enough to focus and maintain thoughts of abundance without further effort. This confines the law only to thought, and we want it to also manifest. Cultivating ideas of abundance is the first step in the process. The ideas that come must be put into practice. You must be attentive to accomplish everything you undertake with joy and competence, confident of the results. For this is the second step in fulfilling the law. You can do everything with the thoughts of your mind. They belong to you and are under your control. You can direct them, compel them to silence or crush them. You can dissolve one thought and place another in its stead. There is no place in the universe where you are the absolute master. The dominion that has been given to you as a divine right applies only to your own thoughts. When you fully understand this and begin to exercise the dominion God has given you, you will start to find the way to God, the only gateway to Him, the gateway of spirit and thought. If you fear that your vital needs will not be provided for tomorrow, next week, next year, for your old age, or that your children will end up in want, discard this thought. Do not permit yourself, even for an instant, to think of anything that should lie outside the domain of the good, that takes care of everything and provides for everything. You even know from your external experience that the universe is self-sustaining and its balance is established by law. The same law that sustains everything also applies to you. Claim your identity under this law, your unity with the whole, and rest in the eternal arms of the cause that knows no deprivation. If you find yourself in a condition of poverty, this mental attitude will attract opportunities to improve your situation. Isolate your mind from the destructive thoughts of all those who operate under the belief in difficult times. If your associates speak of financial constraint, affirm with even more persistence your dependence on God's abundance. By doing so, you align yourself with a divine law of supply and demand that is never influenced by market fluctuations or the opinions of men. Every time you send a thought of sincere faith into the I am part of yourself, you set in motion a chain of causes that must bring the results you seek. Ask for what you want in the name of Christ, from the I am of your divine inner being, and your requests will be granted, both in heaven and on earth. They will be fulfilled swiftly. But when you have asked for something, remain attentive to receive it when it arrives. People complain that their prayers are not answered, when in reality they are not awake to receive the response when it comes. If you ask for money, don't look for an angel from heaven to drop it on a golden platter. On the contrary, keep your eyes open for any new opportunity to earn money, an opportunity that will come as surely as your life. These are some tangible steps on the path toward the greater manifestation you desire. The keys to the Father's treasure house are not given to anyone until they have proven their faith and loyalty. Then they may enter and freely distribute the goods. If the men of the world, with their selfish ideas of what is mine and yours, were given such power without a deep mental cleansing, they would undoubtedly exert even stronger pressures on their fellow beings, and the existing conditions would not improve. A tailor sees a block of marble as so many hours of work, while Michelangelo sees it as an angel privileged to be born. That's the difference between those who see the material world with so much matter and those who look at it with the eyes of the spirit and imagination, working towards perfection. He who paints a picture or sculpts it first sees it in his mind, imagines it first. If he wants a powerful image, he makes his own strength the elements of his image. If he wants beauty and character, he puts love into it. He may not see the perfect image until all these elements are combined. Then, it only takes a little effort to transfer it from his mind onto the canvas or marble. On the sixth day of creation, it is said that God imagined his man, made him in his image and likeness. This does not mean that God resembles man or constructs a personal being with a human form. We make a thing in our own image, the image we have in mind for the thing, and our creation does not resemble us in any way. God has no form because he is spirit. God is an idea that man has attempted to objectify in various forms. He is the universal substance, the life that animates substance and the love that unites it. Naturally, man gives form to every idea he has, even to the idea of God, because the formative faculty of the mind is always active, whether we are awake or asleep. We get material to form mental images from both the outside and the inside. This imaginative or formative power of the mind could do nothing if it did not have the substance it uses to form itself. One could not make a loaf of bread without flour and other ingredients. However, even with all the ingredients available, one could not make bread without having the power to imagine the bread in one's mind. This seems simple, but the fact is that the power to form the loaf is less common than the material available to make it. Flour and water are abundant, but only some people can use them correctly to form an appetizing bread. The same goes for the subject of prosperity. Substance is everywhere, filling the entire universe. There is no scarcity. If we have failed to form the things we needed and desired, it is not because of a lack of substance, but because of a lack of understanding of how to use our power of imagination. In the world, we go through periods of apparent scarcity because people have refused to build their prosperity on the omnipresent and enduring internal substance, and instead have tried to find it in the substance they see outside. The external is formed by the negative power of men in past times. It appears limited, and men struggle for it, forgetting their own divine power to form their own substance from the unlimited supply within them. The lesson for all of us should be to build our prosperity on the internal substance, for nothing permanent comes from those who demonstrate prosperity through the laws of men. All their possessions can be swept away in an instant. They have not built on God's ordered law, and without rich thoughts of God's generosity, no one can have a lasting consciousness of abundance. Poverty or any other negative condition cannot enter our domain unless we invite it. It also cannot stay with us unless we entertain it. Conscious power over all these conditions is one of our greatest pleasures and part of our divine inheritance, but we must learn the law and apply the power rightly. Men have a consciousness of scarcity because they are tempted by Satan, the serpent of sense. The Garden of Eden is within us, here and now, and the subtle temptation to eat of the fruit of sensation is also always with us. We have been given control over the animal forces of the body, the beasts of the fields, and we must tame them, make them servants rather than masters of the body. Instead of feeding them, we must make them feed us. When we think of the animals inside, it will be easy to train them outside. This truth of mastery is taught in all scriptures, and we can demonstrate it in our life because God has endowed us with the power to overcome. We must make use of this inherent power and start using it constructively. The whole human family seems to be insane. All our economic and social problems arise from the selfishness of the sensual man. We will never overcome these external conditions until we have overcome their causes in our inner soul. Surely war and peace, abundance and famine, good times and depressions will repeat until we regain control of the mental substance in the sensual man and give it to the spiritual man. We know there is a spiritual man, and ideally we await his coming, but he will never come unless we bring him. We hope and pray for the arrival of better things. But as Mark Twain said about the weather, nobody does anything about it. We can act on the issue of self-control, which each of us must accomplish if we want to improve our physical, financial, moral, and spiritual condition. We must raise this serpent of sense, just as Moses raised the serpent in the desert, and master it in the name of Christ. Eliminate all negative thoughts that come to mind. However, do not spend all your time bargaining without devoting a significant portion to clear understanding of the present substance and life that wait everywhere. Some of us have inherited to some extent the difficult times by engaging in the race that so many frequently indulge around us. Do not permit yourself to do that. Remember your identity, that you are a child of God, and your inheritance comes from Him. You are the heir to everything the Father owns. Let the I Am save you from every negative thought. The arrows that fly by day and the plague that threatens, these are the negative thoughts of the race in the mental atmosphere. The consciousness of I Am will lead you out of the desert of denial and guide you to the promised land of abundance flowing with milk and honey. Refuse to think that you can lose something. Let go of negative thoughts of financial loss and any other kind of loss. Understand that nothing is ever lost in the entire universe. There are opportunities everywhere, as there always have been, to produce everything you need financially or otherwise. God wants you to become a producer of new ideas. These come from within. Do not for a moment think that you are limited to ideas from outside. Many of them are outdated anyway, and no longer useful. That's why we go through periods of change, so that old, obsolete ideas can be discarded and replaced by new and better ones. Since the beginning of the so-called Depression, there have been more inventions than in any other similar period in the history of the United States. This demonstrates that new ideas are within man, waiting to be called and expressed. We can find new ways of living and new modes of working. We are not confined to the forms and methods of the past. When we commune with our inner spirit and ask for new ideas, they always appear. When these ideas from within us are acknowledged, they go to work and rise to the surface. Then, all the thoughts we and others have had add to them, and new things are produced rapidly. Let's stop slavishly depending on others for everything and become producers. For it is only in this direction that happiness and success lie. Let's begin to focus on this inner man, on this powerful man who produces things, who draws his ideas from a higher dimensional kingdom, who brings ideas from a new territory, the land of Canaan. What kind of character do you give to this inner substance through your thoughts? Change your ideas and increase your substance in the mind, just as Elisha increased the oil for the widow. Find larger and abundant containers. Even a very small idea of substance can be added and increased. The widow had a very small amount of oil, but as the prophet blessed it, it increased until it filled all the containers she could borrow from her neighbors. We must make it a habit to bless everything we have. It may seem foolish to some people to bless our 5 or 10-cent coins, but this is the second step in fulfilling the law. You don't need to sit in a dreamy attitude and hope things will improve. Action is essential. But we know that we are implementing the law of increase. All substance is one and connected, whether visible or invisible. The mind likes something that is already formed and tangible for suggestion to seize. With this image, the mind gets to work to extract a similar substance from the invisible realm and thus increase what we have in our hands to produce a large quantity. Elisha used a small amount of oil to produce a large quantity. Thus, when we bless our money or other possessions, we follow a divine law of increase that has been demonstrated time and again. Another step in demonstrating prosperity is preparing the consciousness to receive the increase. If we pray for rain, we must make sure to have our umbrellas with us. You have read in the 3rd chapter of Kings how Elisha brought water from the invisible and filled the ditches in the desert. First, the ditches had to be dug in the dry earth. It required faith, but the kings had it, and they dug trenches throughout the valley, as Elisha had commanded. It was through Elisha's understanding, who knew the truth about the invisible substance, that this apparent miracle was accomplished. However, the trenches had to be prepared, and you must prepare your consciousness for the arrival of universal substance. Obey the law of nature, just like water or anything else visible, and flow to that place prepared for it. It fills everything you have in your mind, whether containers, ditches, or your wallet. It's not advisable to wait for a too specific demand. You might visualize $100 and get 1,000 when you receive them. Don't limit the substance to what you believe you need or think is necessary. Instead, expand your consciousness and let the infinite mind work. All that is good and necessary will be given to you. Make your statements broad and comprehensive so that your mind can expand infinitely, rather than trying to fit the infinite into your mind. Statements to expand the mind. Infinite wisdom guides me. Infinite love prospers me. And I succeed in everything I undertake, in tranquility and confidence. I sign the power of attraction of divine love as my constantly growing supply magnet. I have unlimited faith in the omnipresent substance that increases and multiplies with my word of abundance. Abundance and more abundance. Father, I thank you for the unlimited increase of spirit, money, and business. God has provided for prosperity in every household. The household is the heart of the nation. The heart is the center of love. Love is the greatest power of attraction in the world. The electromagnet that lifts steel ingots must first be charged with electric current, because without it, it has no power. Similarly, the heart of man, or the household, which is the heart of the nation, must be imbued with the love of God. Then it becomes a magnet that attracts all good from all directions. God has amply provided for every household, but provision lies in the universal substance that only responds to the law. By applying the law, substance is attracted to us and starts working in our interest. The law of love is that we have everything we desire, as a father gives a gift to his children. Thus, the Lord gives to us out of love. When we desire rightly, we put our thoughts and the overmind kingdom in contact with God's Spirit, and we draw forth the invisible substance that manifests in temporary things. Substance then becomes a part of our mind, and through it, of our affairs. We attract spiritual substance to us, as the magnet attracts iron. When we believe that God's love attracts to us the necessary substance for support and provision, this substance begins to accumulate around us, and as we remain in this consciousness, it begins to manifest in all our areas. Perfect love banishes fear. Fear is a great creator of poverty because it breaks positive thoughts. Negative thoughts attract conditions of the same quality. The first thing to do to demonstrate prosperity in the household is to reject all negative thoughts and words. Build an atmosphere of positive thoughts in the home, an atmosphere devoid of fear and filled with love. Don't allow any words of poverty or lack to limit the attracting power of love in the home. Carefully select words that charge the home atmosphere with the idea of abundance. Like attracts like, both in the invisible and the visible. Never make a statement at home, as certain as it may seem, that you would not want to persist thereafter. By speaking of poverty and lack, you create a comfortable space for these unwanted guests near your household, and thus they will want to stay. Instead, fill the house with thoughts and words of abundance, love, and the substance of God. Then, the unwelcome guests will quickly depart. Don't say that money is lacking. This same affirmation will drive it away. Don't say that times are hard for you. These same words will tighten the purse strings until omnipotence itself cannot slip a penny in it. Start now to speak a lot, think a lot, and give thanks for abundance. Involve all members of the household in this same work. Do it as a game, it's quite fun, and most importantly, it actually works. All households can be prosperous, and there should be no households in poverty, for it is only caused by lack of harmony, fear, negative thinking and words. Every visible element of wealth can be traced back to an invisible source. The first comes from the Great One that was planted in the earth, but who sees and knows the life-giving love that touches the seed and makes it grow 100-fold? An invisible force from an invisible force acts on the little seeds and provides supply for the multitude. The physical substance we call earth is the visible form of an extremely abundant mental substance present everywhere, which permeates all things and inspires all things to action. When the seed grain is placed in the earth, the vitalizing thought of the universe enables the tiny germ of life to grasp the spiritual substance around it, and what we call matter turns out to be a form of spirit. There is no matter. Everything is spirit. Words are also seeds, and when they are deposited in the invisible spiritual substance, they grow and produce according to their kind. Do men gather grapes from thorns or figs from thistles? Farmers and gardeners carefully select their seeds. They reject any defective seeds they find, thus ensuring the coming harvest. To have prosperity in the household, you will need to exercise the same intelligent discernment in the choice of words of your seeds. You must expect prosperity if you follow the law of prosperity. Therefore, thank each blessing you receive, and deeply thank each demonstration with the unexpected treasure fallen into your lap. This will keep your heart fresh, because true thanksgiving can be likened to rain falling on the earth, refreshing it and increasing its productivity. When Jesus had only a small provision, he thanked for the little he had. This turned that little into such an abundance that a multitude was fed, and there was still some left. The blessing has not lost its power since the time Jesus used it. Try it, and you will find its effectiveness. The same power of multiplication is in it today. Praise and thanksgiving share the vivifying spiritual power that produces growth and increase in all things. You should never condemn anything in your house. If you want new furniture or clothes to replace what you currently have, do not speak of your current affairs as if they were old or in bad condition. Take care of your words. Dress as befits a child of a king, and imagine your furnished house as your ideal desires. Thus, you will plant in the home atmosphere the seed of wealth and abundance. Everything will come to you. Use the patience, wisdom, and consistency that the farmer employs to sow and cultivate, and your harvest will be sure. Your words concerning truth are energized and vitalized by the living Spirit. Your mind is now open and receptive to an influence of divine ideas that will inspire in you the understanding of the power of your own thoughts and words. You are prosperous. Your home is a love magnet that attracts to it all that is good from the infallible, inexhaustible reserve of supply. Its increase comes from your just application of God's law in your home. God's blessing enriches and adds no sorrow. Jesus taught men how to live in rest and peace, a simple life where the simplicity of his teachings is received and appreciated. People change their way of living, forsaking display and opting for simplicity and the beauty of things worth having. Every summer, those who feel it plan vacations, and many enjoy a small cabin in the forest where they can live a simple and natural life close to nature. This demonstrates that they long to rid themselves of the burdens of conformity and rest in contact with the reality of things. The soul grows weary of the wear and tear of the artificial world, and from time to time must have a season of rest. Jesus invites, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." There is a great difference between a simple life and poverty, both being associated in the minds of some people, which is why they shy away from the idea of a simple existence. Even those who have attained a certain degree of spiritual understanding sometimes dismiss from their minds any thought of a simple form of life, because they fear others will think they are not demonstrating prosperity. In such cases, those who judge should remember not to judge according to appearances, and those who are judged should be satisfied with the praise of God rather than the praise of men. All who base their prosperity solely on possessions have purely material prosperity, which, although it may seem great for a time, will disappear because it is founded on external change and has no root in consciousness. There is great similarity in the homes of almost all people who have about the same income. Each remains conscious of suggestions and furnishes his house with the same kind of things as his neighbors. Here and there are exceptions. Someone expresses their individuality by overcoming the suggestion of the mass and buying the type of furniture they truly want or that are truly charming and useful. This free, independent spirit has much in its favor to make a demonstration of prosperity. Even though being like others, or having as much as others, provokes a spirit of anxiety that hinders the exercise of faith in demonstration, the simple life implies neither poverty nor skepticism. It is as different from austerity as from unbridled luxury. It is a natural, free, childlike way of life. One never really knows what true prosperity is until they achieve this simplicity and independence of mind. The simple life is a state of consciousness. It is peace, comfort, satisfaction, and joy in living and loving, and it is attained by thinking of God and worshipping in spirit and in truth. If you want to learn to demonstrate prosperity in your home by a correct use of the powers and faculties God has given you, understand from the start that you have these powers and faculties. You are in possession of all that is necessary for the demonstration of prosperity, and you can engage with the greatest confidence and faith. You can draw from the omnipresent substance through eternity, and yet it will never diminish, because it consists of ideas. By using thought, you take some of these ideas into your mind, and they begin to manifest in your affairs. Love is one of the ideas that provide a key to the infinite storehouse of abundance. It opens generosity in us, opens generosity in others when we begin to love and bless them. It will also open a spirit of generosity in God. Surely it will and does. If you consciously love and bless God, you will soon find that things come to you. You will be surprised that just thinking of God attracts to you the things you want and await, and will bring many other blessings you had not even thought of. Thousands of people have tested this law to their entire satisfaction, and we have many testimonies illustrating how people have demonstrated abundance in the face of apparent scarcity, simply by thinking of God's love and thanking for what they have. This law will manifest for you or anyone who faithfully applies it. For love never disappoints. Businessmen and industry have demonstrated large sums of money through love. They did not love God, but the love of money attracted them. Substance came to them, allowing them to accumulate money, but simply as matter without the divine idea that ensures permanence. We hear of high finance men going bankrupt as frequently as men making great fortunes. When we develop a spiritual consciousness, we transfer this personal love to a higher and stable plane, from the love of money and material things to the love of God. So conceived, it will attract to us all the resources of the infinite spirit forever and ever. Once the connection with God's universal bank is established, one has a permanent source of wealth. Jesus said that when we approach the altar to make an offering, we must have nothing against our brother in our hearts. He said that before we can come into contact with the love and power of God, we must first make peace with our brother. This means that we must cultivate love for our fellow beings to set in motion the attractive force of love. All we have to do is increase our love for others and expel from our mind all hatred and fear that will weaken the perfect functioning of this mighty magnet. When love attracts, hatred dissipates. Before you approach the altar of God's abundance, go and become friends with your brothers. Be friends even with the powers of money. Do not be envious of the rich. Never condemn those who have money just because they have it, and you do not. Do not wonder how they obtained their money, and if they are honest or not. All of that does not concern you. Your concern is to get what is rightfully yours, and you do so by thinking of God's omnipresent substance and how you can take hold of it through love. Get in touch with the riches of God in spirit, seize them by love, and you will have enough for every day, for love is the fulfillment of the law, the eternal law of the Spirit, that continues to operate regardless of what you may think, say, or do. It is ordained that love will bring you prosperity, and you need not wonder if it will or how it will. Do not worry for saying what we will eat or drink or what we will wear. Do not worry. Worry is a thief and a robber, for it deprives you of good and breaks the law of the attraction of love. the law that says perfect love casts out fear. Banish worry by silently and confidently affirming the attracting power of divine love as the constantly active magnet that attracts your unfailing supply. Thought that someone owes us something, or that we owe something to someone. We should fill our minds with thoughts of all sufficiency, and where there is no lack, there can be no debts. Thus, we find that the way to pay our debts is to fill our minds with the substance of ideas that are entirely opposed to thoughts of lack that have caused the debts. Ideas of abundance will bring you more quickly and surely what is yours than any thought you may have about debtors who honor their obligations to you. See abundance everywhere and affirm it not only for yourself, but also for everyone else. Affirm abundance, especially for those whom you have kept in the thought of owing you. Thus you will help them pay their debts more easily than if you simply erase their names from your accounts receivable. Help pay each other's debts by forgiving their debts and declaring for them the abundance that is already yours in spirit. The idea of abundance will also bear fruit in your own life. Let the law of abundance manifest in you, in your affairs. That's how the Father forgives your debts, not by cancelling them in his books, but by erasing them from his mind. He no longer holds it against you when you deny their reality. The Father is the ever-present Spirit, where everything that appears has its origin. God's love always sees you well, happy, and abundantly provided for. But God's wisdom requires order and right relationship before it can manifest in your affairs as abundance. His love would give you all your wishes, but his wisdom orders you to forgive your debtors before your debts are forgiven. To remedy any state of limited finances or ill health caused by worry, you must start by eliminating that worry, which is the original cause. You must free the mind from the burden of debt before you can repay it. Many people have found that the affirmation, "I owe nothing to anyone except love," has greatly helped them counter this thought of debt. As the words were used, their minds opened to an influx of divine love and faithfully cooperated with the divine law of forgiveness. Thoughts, words, and actions built a consciousness as strong as the healing and enriching power of God's love, enabling them to live and work peacefully and profitably with their associates. Constantly renewed in health, faith, and integrity, they were able to fulfill all obligations that came to them. The affirmation, "I owe nothing to anyone except love," does not mean that we can deny owing money to our creditors or try to avoid paying contracted obligations. What is denied is the overwhelming thought of debt or lack. The work to pay the debts is done within oneself, which has nothing to do with debts already incurred, but with the mistaken thoughts that produced them. When adhering to right ideas, overwhelming debts are not incurred. Debts are produced by thoughts of lack, impatient desire, and greed. When these thoughts are overcome, debts are overcome, forgiven and fully paid, and we are freed from them forever. Your thoughts must always be worthy of your highest self, of your fellow beings, and of God. Thoughts that do the most harm to you are often thoughts of criticism and condemnation. By maintaining the thought, "There is now no condemnation in Christ Jesus," fill your mind with thoughts of divine love, justice, peace, and forgiveness. This will repay your debts of love, which are the only debts you really have. Then you will see how quick, easy, and natural it is to pay all your external debts and at the same time smooth out all things without harmony in your mind, body, and affairs. Nothing will enrich your mind as quickly and free you from all thoughts of lack as the realization of divine love. This love will quickly and perfectly release you from the burden of debts and heal you of your physical ailments, often caused by worry, depression, and financial fear. Love will bring back your own, resolve all misunderstandings, and make your life and affairs healthy, happy, harmonious, and free, as it should be. Love is indeed the fulfillment of the law. The path is open to pay your debts. Hand them over to God, along with all your doubts and fears. Follow the light that floods your mind. The power, love, and wisdom of God are here because His inside is within you. Surrender total control of your life and affairs to Him. Hand over your business and family affairs, your finances, and let Him pay your debts. In fact, you already do it because it is His rightful desire to free you from any cause, and He takes away from you the cause of debt whether it comes from owing or being owed. There is as much substance as there has ever been, but its free flow has been hindered by selfishness. We must free our minds from the selfish acquisition that dominates the race's thinking, and thus do our part in the great work of freeing the world from greed. It is the duty of every Christian metaphysician to help solve this problem by affirming that the universal mind of their ministry is now manifesting as a distributing energy worldwide, that all stored, hoarded, and tainted thoughts dissolve, that all people have things in common, that no one is deprived of anything, and that the divine law of distribution of the infinite supply that Jesus demonstrated is now manifesting worldwide. The Lord is the earth and its fullness. There is legitimate commerce taking place through what is called credit. Credit is a convenience that should be used by those who appreciate its value and ensure not to abuse it, as doing so would ruin it. However, many individuals are not ready to use the credit system advantageously and are likely to abuse it. Primarily, few individuals are familiar with the workings of sound credit systems, and often they take on obligations without being sure of their ability to fulfill them, especially in case of unforeseen complications. Often, the individual loses everything they encompass and are encompassed by, and find themselves burdened with debts. These things are not in divine order and largely responsible for the delay of prosperity. No one should take on an obligation if they're not willing to quickly and willingly fulfill it when necessary. He who knows God as their unfailing resource can be sure that He will provide when needed. So why incur debts when relying on His daily provision without debts? In God's kingdom, there are neither creditors nor debtors. If you're in this kingdom, you no longer need to carry the thought of debt, either as a debtor or a creditor. Under the divine law, one should not seek things beyond current means. There is a growing wealth of consciousness that comes from the certain knowledge that God is an infinite and unfailing supply. External things adjust to the internal pattern, and riches are attracted to one who vibrates near the selfless heart of God. Their environment is beautified by the glory of His presence, and there is a satisfying and lasting prosperity in their affairs. There's only one way to free oneself from debts: the desire to be free, followed by the understanding that debt has no legitimate place in the kingdom of God, and one is determined to completely erase it from their mind. As you work towards your freedom, it will be helpful to have daily periods of meditation and prayer. Do not focus on debts in your prayer, and do not spoil your prayer by constantly thinking about them. Think about what you want to demonstrate, not what you want to free yourself from. When you pray, thank the Father for His care and guidance, for His provision and abundance, for His love and wisdom, for His infinite abundance, and the privilege you have to enjoy it. Here are some prosperity prayers that can help establish you in the truth of abundance and erase the mistaken thought of debt. They are offered as suggestions to form your own prayers, but they can be used with excellent results. I no longer worry about finances. You are my sufficiency in all things. The spirit of honesty, promptness, efficiency, and order is now expressing itself in me and in all that I do. I am free from all mortal thought limitations regarding quantities and values. The superabundance of wealth of the Christ Spirit is now mine, and I prosper in all my ways. Psalm 23 is a treatment to free the mind from the idea of debt. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for You are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The 10th way to prosperity: just as you abound in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, and in all earnestness and love for us, also aims to abound. Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will be bursting with wine. Under the Mosaic law, the tithe or tenth was required as the Lord's portion. Throughout the Old Testament, the tithe and tenth were mentioned as a reasonable and just return to the Lord, in recognition of Him, as the source of supply. After Jacob saw the vision of the ladder with angels ascending and descending, he set up a pillar and made a vow to the Lord, saying, "Of all that you give me, I will give a tenth." In chapter 3 of Malachi, we find God's blessing directly linked to faithfulness in giving the treasure to the Lord. But gifts should be made because it's just and because one loves to give, not out of a sense of duty or the reward that will come. There will be a reward after giving. Jesus also assures us of this in a direct promise, "Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be put into your lap. For with the measure you use it will be measured back to you." Promises of spiritual benefits and increased generosity from God by observing this divine law of giving and receiving abound in all scriptures. It's necessary to spread and increase further. He who withholds more than necessary only begets want. The liberal soul shall be made fat, and he that waters shall be watered also himself. He who has a generous eye will be blessed, for he gives of his bread to the poor. He who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Blessed are those who sow beside all waters. We now live under greater and more complete blessings from God than mankind has ever known. Therefore, it's fitting that we give accordingly and remember the law of tithing. For if the law required the 10th part in that time, it's just as appropriate that we give joyfully now. One of the greatest incentives to give generously is a keen appreciation of the blessings secured for us by the redemptive work of Jesus Christ, who did not spare his own Son, but gave him for us all. In him he will also freely give us all things. Freely you have received, freely give. True giving is the love and generosity of the heart, quickened by the Spirit, responding to the Father's love and generosity of heart. In his second letter, Paul made a moving appeal to the Corinthians to give generously to their poorer brethren in Jerusalem. He suggests principles of giving that are always applicable because giving is a grace that contributes to the spiritual growth of all men at all times. Without giving, the soul withers, but when giving is practiced as part of Christian life, the soul expands and becomes like unto God and the grace of generosity. No restoration to the likeness of God can be complete unless the spirit, heart, and soul open daily to the broad, free, and generous spirit that characterizes both our God and Father. Therefore, it's not surprising that Paul ranks the grace of giving with faith, knowledge, and love in his first letter to the church in Corinth. Paul suggested a very simple yet practical plan to exercise this grace of giving. On the first day of the week, let each one of you lay something aside, storing up as he may prosper, meaning each member would contribute to the building of a treasury, which was to be the Lord's storehouse, where each was to regularly deposit offerings in proportion to his means. By adopting this plan, the giver became the custodian of the Lord's goods and entered into a course of training and discipline necessary to be a good steward, for it takes wisdom to know how to rightly distribute God's generosity. Perhaps there is no more straightforward way of starting to grow in the grace of giving in our day. Those who followed this method generally discovered they had more money to give than they had thought possible. For the giving plan to succeed, several things must be observed. Firstly, there must be willingness. If the willingness is acceptable according to what a man has, not according to what he doesn't have, God loves a cheerful giver. Then, the giving must be done with faith and without restraint, even if the offering seems small. Many instances of recorded giving in the Bible, worthy of special mention, praise, and blessing, are cases where the offering itself was small. The widow who sustained Elijah in her time of famine gave him a cake made with her last bit of flour. Through her faith and generous spirit, she was rewarded with an abundant daily supply of food for herself, her children, and even for Elijah. The jar of flour shall not be used up, and the jug of oil shall not run dry. This same truth is wonderfully illustrated in the New Testament, where it's clearly stated that it's not the quantity of the offering but the spirit with which it's given that determines its worth and power. Jesus sat opposite the treasury and observed how the crowd put money into it. Many rich people put in large amounts. Then a poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins worth only a few cents. Jesus called his disciples and said to them, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all she had to live on. This poor widow illustrated what it means to give with faith, and sometimes 2 small coins were as great a gift, eliciting praise from the Master himself. The results of giving with faith are as certain today as they were in Jesus' time, for the law is infallible at all times. A third requirement to fulfill the law of giving and receiving is that the offering be a just and fair proportion of all that one receives. The quantity was established by Paul, and the measure he gave was, as he may prosper. There's a certain definiteness in this, yet it nevertheless admits freedom for the giver to exercise his faith, judgment, and individual will. The question of wise distribution is closely linked to that of filling God's treasury. To whom to give and when are quite important questions. However, each individual finds it necessary to rely on the spirit of abundance manifested in his own heart, because there are no rules or precedents one can follow in detail. This is as it should be, as it keeps active the judgment, faith, love, sympathy, and will of the individual. However, a careful study of the underlying laws of spiritual giving will assist everyone in exercising these divine faculties as they should be exercised. If we follow the spirit of wisdom, we won't give to anything contrary to the teachings of Jesus, but we will spend every penny in promoting the good news of the life he proclaims, and in promoting human brotherhood, which is his mission to establish on earth among all who become children through him. True spiritual giving is recommended as a double joy. First, that which comes with putting the offering on the altar or into the Lord's treasury, and then the joy of sharing our share of God's generosity with us. One of the blessings is the satisfying knowledge that we are respecting the law and paying our debt of love and justice to the Lord. The other is the joy of sharing the Lord's generosity. Justice comes first, then generosity. Even so-called heathens acknowledge that giving is part of worship, for we find them coming with offerings when they worship their idols. All ages and all religious dispensations have emphasized giving as a vital part of their worship. In this era where we have so much more is required of us, even unto our own giving with all that we are and have. This privilege brings immeasurable benefits as it releases us from personal living, unifies us with the universal, and thus opens our inner and outer life to the incoming and outgoing of life, love, generosity, and grace of God. This is the blessed result of faithful obedience to the law and the exercise of the grace of giving. People were astonished when the prophet Malachi told them that they had robbed God and sought to know where they had failed, while they thought they had served the Lord so faithfully. People are amazed today to learn that they have been unfaithful to God's law, for Malachi's message is for us as much as for the ancients. The Spirit of God gave this message through the prophet. Bring all the tithes into the storehouse, so that there may be food in my house, and test me in this, says the Lord of hosts. If I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you a blessing until there is no more need, and I will rebuke the devourer for you, so that it will not destroy the fruits of your soil, and your vine in the field shall not fail to bear fruit, says the Lord of hosts. All nations will call you blessed, for you will be a land of delight, says the Lord of hosts. Study carefully this 3rd chapter of Malachi if you want to know the happy solution to the problem of giving and receiving. See how practical it is for all people in all areas of life, and equally for nations. It offers a solution to the problems of the farmer, clearly outlines a law of prosperity for all kinds of individuals, for those in need of protection for their crops against frost, drought, floods, for those seeking to escape plagues, pestilences, and the myriad things that would destroy their provision and subsistence. It's a simple yet highly effective law, giving the tithe or tenth or the first fruits or their equivalent to the Lord. One shouldn't expect God to respond to all human needs of providing this protection and increase unless the human responds to God's requirements. The act of giving honors the divine law as it involves acknowledging God as the giver of all. Without acknowledgement of the source of our provision, we have no guarantee to continue using it. Many doubt whether asking the Lord for protection and abundance in crops or other provisions will truly make any difference. Many who work in urban areas or in business find it strange to believe in omnipresent prosperity. Hence, disbelief is present in them at the very time unwavering faith is most necessary. There's a psychological reason for people to obey the spiritual law. When a person obeys God's law in any area, their faith is immediately strengthened proportionally, and doubts disappear. When someone puts God first in their finances, not just in thought but in every act, by offering their first fruits, a tenth of their income to the Lord, their faith in omnipresent provision becomes 100-fold stronger and prospers. Therefore, obeying this law gives them an inner knowing that they build their finances on a secure foundation that won't fail them. The whole universe belongs to God, and though all things are for man's use and enjoyment, every individual must learn not to selfishly possess anything. When man learns that a higher law than custom and human desire is at work on earth to bring justice, righteousness, and equity, they'll begin to obey this law by giving the tithe, loving their neighbor, and doing unto others what they wish to be done unto them. Then, man will reach the end of all the problems they've created through selfishness and greed, and they'll become healthy, prosperous, and happy. A pastor from a small church in Georgia suggested to his congregation, mainly comprised of cotton farmers, to dedicate a tenth of their land to the Lord and seek protection from the cotton worm, which had devastated crops in the region for several years. 7 farmers in the congregation decided to do so. They took no measures to protect their crops in these dedicated acres, yet the plague didn't attack the cotton there. The quality of the fiber was better in those acres than in neighboring plots. The experience was so successful that practically all farmers in that community decided to follow this plan in the future. Many experiences like this motivate men to respect our relationship with the infinite principle of life everywhere present, which we know as God. This divine element of life, manifesting as growth and substance, resides in factors that combine to produce cotton, wheat, and all other forms of vegetation. Therefore, if the farmer works in acknowledged sympathy with this vital principle, it will work in sympathy with him and for his good. If everyone contributes with love and understanding towards each other, the result will be a more abundant harvest and greater prosperity. Not just the farmer, but also the banker, the merchant, and the professional can work in sympathy and harmony with this principle of growth and increase. The infinite, vital principle is as sensitive in one field as in another, and is present everywhere, even in inanimate objects. Even coined gold is tending toward expansion and growth. The materials handled by the merchant are made of the same substance that comprises the universe and contain within them the germ of growth and increase. Therefore, all men are daily associated with life, and by rendering the reverential respect due to it, and by testifying this acknowledgement, by devoting a portion of their increase, they prosper. The tithe equates to greater fertility of the land. If the farmer produces 2, 6, or 20 bushels more in his field, that extra portion, which they wouldn't have had otherwise, is the Lord's share. In commerce, the tithe equates to better quality goods. In professional life, the tithe is an increase in capacity or an increase in appreciation. The tithe principle can apply in all our industrial and social relations. In all cases where it has been applied and followed for a while, the tither has been remarkably blessed, just like in the case of cotton farmers and their tithe fields. Many people want to give but seem not to know how, where to start. They don't know how much to give, when, or how frequently to offer their gifts. And there are many related questions. To answer these questions, they need to find a defined basis for their gifts, a rule they can comply with. This is where the tithe law fits in perfectly, for it's a proven, solid foundation demonstrated for thousands of years. The tithe can be a tenth of the salary, income or net business proceeds, or money received from the sale of goods. It's based on any form of provision, whichever way it comes. It must be set aside to support a spiritual work or workers, and must be reserved first, even before personal expenses. For in the correct relation of things, God is always first. Then everything else follows in a divine order and falls into appropriate place. The great promise of prosperity is that if men seek first God and His righteousness, all things will be added unto them. One of the most practical and judicious ways of seeking the kingdom of God, firstly, is to tithe. Placing God first in finances. It's God's promise, logic, and the experience of all who have tried it, that all things necessary for their comfort, well-being, and happiness have been added to them abundantly. The tithe establishes the method of giving and brings into consciousness a sense of order and adequacy that will manifest in someone's life and affairs as greater efficiency and increased prosperity. Another blessing that follows the practice of tithing is the continuous letting go of what is received, keeping the mind open to good and free from all greed. Giving an occasional significant gift and then waiting for a while before giving another won't provide this lasting advantage, for the mind during that time might fill with material thoughts of fear, lack, or selfishness. When a person tithes, they give continuously, so that no spirit of restraint, fear, or limiting thought takes hold of them. Nothing hinders a person's mind in this way, rendering them fearless and free to constantly receive the good that comes to them. With the practice of tithing, every day, every week, every payday, or when the 10th of a prosperity comes, as it does and will, the first thought of the giver is to thank God and consecrate the 10th of the new sum. The free and open mind maintained in this way with God is sure to produce true joy, real satisfaction in life, and genuine prosperity. The tithe rests upon a law that cannot fail and is the surest way ever found to demonstrate abundance, for it's God's own law and form of giving. And all the tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or of the fruit of the trees, is the Lord's. It is holy to the Lord. We see how God gives without reserve and without expecting mental return, without mentally demanding a reward from those who have received from us a gift with reservation. That's not a gift, it's a bribe. There's no promise of increase unless we give freely, completely let go of the gift, and acknowledge the universal scope of the law. Next, the gift has the possibility to depart and return multiplied. We don't know how far the blessing can travel before returning, but it's a wonderful and encouraging fact that the longer it takes to return, the more hands are touched and the more hearts are blessed. All these hands and hearts add something in substance, and the increase is even greater upon its return. There's no need to try to fix the ways through which our good must arrive. There's no reason to think that what you give will come back through the person you gave it to. All men are united in Christ and form a universal brotherhood. We must abandon all personal claims such as, "I gave you, now you give me," and replace it with, "Inasmuch as you have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me." The law will bring to each what is due to them. The harvest of the seeds one has sown will return, for it cannot escape the law. Although the return might very likely come through a very different channel than the one we expected, attempting to fix the channel through which our good must come to us is one way man closes off their own provision. The spiritually minded man doesn't selfishly use the law but gives from love of giving, without thinking of reward and with no motive other than love. They subject themselves more to the inevitable operation of the law, and their return is all the more generous. They inevitably become enriched. There's no escape for them. Jesus said, "Give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, shall men give into your bosom." He wasn't making a promise. He was stating a law that never ceases to operate. The generosity of the giver of all good is so inexhaustible that for the one who has eyes to see and faith to receive, God is an unfailing source of provision. The giver withholds nothing from those who come in the name of a son and heir, thus claiming their part from the Father. It's pleasing to the Father to give us the kingdom, and all that the Father has is ours, but we must have the faith and courage to claim it. Those who achieve great things in the industrial world are those who have faith in the power of their ideas to produce money. Those who desire to accomplish great things in demonstrating spiritual resources must have the faith to grasp divine ideas and the courage to express them. Conception must be followed by affirmation that the law is working instantly. Then the provision will follow in manifestation. Giving correctly is the key to receiving abundantly. There's a law of giving and receiving that demands careful study if we want to use it for our demonstrations of prosperity. It's a law of mental action and can be learned and applied like any other law. Jesus' teaching stands out because it can be practically applied to the affairs of daily life. It's not simply a religion in the usual sense of the term, but rather a rule of thought, action, life, and being. It's not just ethical but practical, and men have not yet sounded the depths of Jesus' simple yet exclusive words. For some people, it's inconceivable to link Jesus' teachings with accounting or the market. However, a deeper vision of their meaning and purpose that the Spirit of Truth is now revealing to the world shows that these lofty teachings are the rules of practice for everyday life in all areas. They are vital to modern civilization and the very foundation of business stability. The law of giving and receiving that Jesus taught, "Give, and it shall be given unto you," applies to all our commercial as well as social relationships. We have failed to make this doctrine of Jesus a practical standard for daily guidance. Because we haven't understood the law on which it's based, Jesus wouldn't have proposed a doctrine that wasn't true and not based on an unchanging law. We can be sure that this doctrine of giving and receiving is powerful enough to sustain all departments of civilization. We haven't explored the teaching enough, but have rather believed we understood it from a simple, superficial study. Look not at the things which are seen, says Paul, and Jesus also warned us not to judge by appearances. We shouldn't draw conclusions before delving into the underlying causes and laws. The things we see outwardly are effects that have sprung from causes that are invisible to us. There's an inside and an outside to everything. Mental as well as material conditions pervade the universe. Man slips at will through the entire gamut of causes and effects. Almost the entire race almost unconsciously slips towards an effect, identifying so much with the senses in the effect that the causes are lost sight of. For millennia over time, an awakening occurs, and the side of the cause of existence once again draws men's attention, as is evidenced, for example, in the doctrine of Jesus Christ. But men cannot grasp the great truth in an instant and cling to what is clearly visible to them, the side of the effect. The truth that things have a spiritual identity as well as a material one, and that the spiritual side, that of the cause and of greater value, is a revelation that may take time to reach most people. In this case, it's the material side they cling to, thinking it's all and refusing to let it go. Men have taken the side of the letter or appearance of the doctrine of Jesus Christ and materialized it to fit their beliefs and customs. That's why the message of Christ hasn't purified commerce, society, and government, but it must become operative spiritually in these domains. It will readily accomplish the desired work when mentally studied and when understood and applied from a spiritual standpoint. Reforming the economy is necessary more than any other department of daily life. Money has been manipulated by greed until it's sick and secretly seeks a panacea, but doesn't seek healing. In the religion of Jesus Christ, it's actually the last place one would go for help, because many proponents of the doctrine of Jesus Christ are themselves economically dependent and have no solution for the economic problem. They don't understand the power of their own religion. However, a permanent remedy for the world's economic ills will never be found outside a practical application of the laws on which the doctrine of Jesus Christ is based. The correction of solving any problem is ensured by the correct relationship of its elements. Any true reform begins with the individual. Jesus started there. He didn't demand legislation to control men or their actions, but he called his 12 apostles and through them individually instituted this reform that relies on an appeal to the intelligence, honesty, and innate goodness of each man. He told them to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. As people learn more about the dynamic effect of thought and how ideas pass from one mind to another, they increasingly see the wisdom of Christ's teaching. They begin to understand that there's an unvarying law of the action of the mind, and every thought and speech can be applied to it. So, when Jesus said, "By your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned," he taught the power of thoughts and words to produce results according to the ideas that support them. Being the metaphysical side of Jesus' teaching, we have discovered that certain thoughts held in people's minds cause widespread misery, disease, and death. We have also discovered that these thoughts can be dissolved or transformed, and the entire man renewed through his conscious will. Paul understood this process well and said, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Among the destructive thoughts in which men indulge and exercise are forms of selfishness. We know as greed, covetousness, acquisition of money, desire for financial gain, and possessing the things of the world. These thoughts seriously threaten to disrupt the civilization of the world and the stability of the entire race. The mere thought of making money is allowing men and women to generate their own cold steam within their souls until all the sunlight of love, and even life itself, is extinguished. The remedy for the misery caused by destructive thoughts is not far to seek. It lies in constructive thinking along the lines laid down by Jesus. Indeed, the remedy for all the ills inherited by humanity lies in conformity to the divine law that Jesus revealed to his true disciples. It is said that these true disciples, according to Acts 4:32, were of one heart and one soul, and none of them said that anything they possessed was their own, but they had all things in common. Many true Christians have observed this just law and have endeavored to conform to it in community life. Such efforts have not always succeeded because there hasn't been the necessary recognition of the mental factor and the discipline of ideas. As long as the idea of greed is rooted in the human mind as its dominant factor, there cannot be successful communal living. This idea must first be eliminated from the mental plane. The next step, outer practice, will then be safe and successful everywhere. True metaphysicians are preparing to become members of the great colony that Jesus will establish by working to eliminate from their minds all selfish ideas, as well as all other discordant vibrations that produce disharmony among members of the same group. A step in this direction is the gradual introduction of the voluntary offering plan to replace the commercial standard of reward. Through services in the world, we strive to educate people on this issue of giving and receiving, and let their own experience show them that there's a divine law of balance in financial matters that corresponds to the law of balance and scales that keep suns and planets in place. For this immense effort to succeed, we must rely on the loving cooperation of all to whom we impart this law. It is based on love and justice and fair in all aspects of men's affairs. It goes even further in restoring harmony and balance both in the mind and body, resulting in happiness, health, and prosperity. Love and justice are powerful forces, and all things will eventually fall under their influence, for even a few men and women with good intentions can, through right thinking and consequent action, introduce these ideas into the consciousness of the race and pave the way for their universal adoption. The movement has already begun and is rapidly gaining ground. All students and readers are asked to promote it by resolving to be disinterested and just without coercion. The consciousness of the race is formed by the currents of thought and the prevailing beliefs of the whole people. Some men and women rise above these currents of thought and become independent thinkers. The prevailing idea in the race that making money is the measure of success is being replaced by usefulness and good deeds. This idea must be implemented by individuals who have resolved to think and act in the manner of Jesus Christ. To be one of these individuals and contribute to changing the consciousness of the race, engage first in spirit in the ministry of Jesus and resolve to pursue the great work he entrusted to you. This doesn't mean you must preach like Paul or necessarily undertake extensive work outwardly. In the silence of your inner chamber, you can accomplish a mighty work by daily denying beliefs in greed and selfishness and affirming the universal flow of divine love and justice. Make the idea of equity and exact justice among men the central theme of all you say and do. When you see examples of greed and selfishness, or when thoughts about them seek to settle in your mind, remember the Master's words, "What does it matter to you? Follow me." Do not allow, even for a moment, the conception of a plan to take advantage of your fellow beings in any exchange or transaction. Firmly uphold the law of equity and justice that acts through you, knowing with certainty that all you need will be provided to meet all your requirements. Place the highest value on all you receive and demand the same for all you give. Don't try to enforce this demand with human methods. There's a better way. Think of yourself as a spirit working with powerful spiritual forces and recognize that the demands of the spirit must and will be met. Don't make plans for the future. Let the future take care of itself. Having fears or doubts about this exhausts your spiritual strength and power. Firmly hold the thought of the omnipresence of universal supply, its perfect balance, and its swift action to fill any apparent void or place of lack. If you've been in the habit of hoarding or practicing strict economy, change your thought currents towards generosity. Practice giving, even in a modest way. Give with a spirit of love, and even when you see no possibility of returning actual substance in your gift, give it the substance of the heart. Through the power of your word, you can spiritually bless and multiply everything you give. Consider yourself a steward of God, dispensing His inexhaustible provisions. In this manner, you set in motion mental and spiritual forces that will eventually bring great visible results. Be joyful in giving. God loves the cheerful giver because their spirit and heart are open to the flow of the pure substance of being that balances all things. Don't give in the idea that you are doing charity. The idea of charity has infested the consciousness of the race for thousands of years and is responsible for the large number of human dependents. Do everything you can to undo this mental error. Charity as commonly understood does not exist. Everything belongs to God, and all His children have equal rights. The fact that an individual has a surplus and gives some of it to another doesn't make them a benefactor and the other a dependent. The one with a surplus is only a steward of God and merely fulfills the duty of their stewardship. When you ask for wisdom and divine understanding regarding giving, it becomes a joy both for the giver and the receiver. The disciples of Jesus who are doing their teaching and healing work must, like Him, receive voluntary offerings for their ministry to the people. Most of those who dedicate themselves to being teachers and healers recognize this law of giving and receiving, but there are many who do not understand it. Firstly, there are those who are enslaved to the idea of avarice. Then there are those who are still enslaved to the idea of charity. Both categories need education and treatment to free themselves from mental limitation and illness. Miserly people are those who suffer in the body and are the most difficult to heal due to the mental bias that drives them to get everything at the lowest price, including the kingdom of heaven. They need to be patiently educated to be just, as it is the right thing, and to learn to abandon the spirit of seeking and replace it with the spirit of generosity. They will easily do this with mental exercise, but they are not as willing to give up the symbol of money. However, continued treatments in silence, complemented by oral and written instructions, will eventually prevail and heal them. There are many examples that could be given to demonstrate the working of the law. The greedy idea has great power over the body. It would be of little use to treat the external manifestation before eliminating the internal cause from the mind. The salvation of these individuals lies in learning to give generously and freely, not out of obligation or for reward, but out of love for giving. Some metaphysicians think to heal their patients from the domination of greedy thoughts by charging a good round price for their treatments. Likewise, the doctor who charges the most is considered the one who most effectively heals their patients. And any service for which an exorbitant price is charged is undoubtedly deemed the best. However, this would be an absurd notion. Metaphysical healing has become so popular that hundreds of people have devoted themselves to it as a business, turning it into an industry based on the old commercial idea as cold, calculating, harsh, and inflexible as the idea among money changers. Surely there is a more excellent way, more in harmony with the divine law, a path that allows the heart, just as the head and hand, to be used in the grace of giving and receiving. Those who employ the method of voluntary offering encounter criticism and opposition from those who advocate the commercial method and claim that charging a set sum is the legitimate form. They accuse unity of favoring charity and poverty, and of maintaining the spirit of getting something for nothing that so many people manifest. Our response is that we follow the only course that could effectively eradicate these erroneous states of consciousness and lead people to understand the spiritual law of prosperity through giving in love. Each must give as they receive. In fact, it is only through giving that one can receive, As long as the heart does not beat in the center and the mind does not open to the truth, there will be no permanent healing. Everyone can make a fair return on all they receive. Our goal is to show the cashless indigent that they can give something in return for the good done to them. They can pass on the true word to another in need, or simply raise their voice in thanksgiving and praise where they were silent before. We acknowledge the necessity of mental action attached to wealth. A part of it must be released before one can receive the light and power of the Spirit. Our work is to bring men and women to the place of true and lasting power, where they are superior to both wealth and poverty. We can do this by showing them they are spiritual beings living in a spiritual world, here and now, and through understanding the truth of their being and their relationship with God. This domain must be realized. The central and most vital fact you must understand is that an idea has the power to build thought structures that, in turn, materialize in the environment and external affairs, determining every detail of your existence. Each man is a king who rules over his own subjects. These subjects are the ideas that exist in his mind, the subjects of his thought. Every man's ideas are as varied and show as many character traits as the inhabitants of any empire. But all can be subdued and shaped by the power of I Am, which is the sovereign of the kingdom of your mind. In your mental domain there may be colonies of foreign ideas, the Philistines, the Canaanites, and other foreign tribes that the children of Israel found in their promised land when they tried to take possession of it. The history of the children of Israel and how they gained possession of this land is a symbolic representation of the experience of anyone seeking to claim their own consciousness in the name of the Lord. The Hebrew meaning of the Canaanite name is merchant or trader, that is, a set of ideas related to the commercial phase of life. Study the spiritual ideas of the children of Israel in their experiences with these Canaanites, and you will gain much valuable advice for subduing and managing your own ideas of money gain. You can allow avarice and parsimony to develop in your mental kingdom until the very blood of your body begins to dry up, and your nerves are agitated and paralyzed by the fear of future poverty. If so, it's time for these ideas to be expelled, and a new set established in your kingdom to activate the construction of a new state of consciousness, a new nation. Begin immediately to set aside your consuming thoughts of gain and reflect on generosity. Start to be generous yourself. The phrase, "It is more blessed to give than to receive," will prove itself as a law in itself, as you will be blessed with a new influx of ideas of life, health, and prosperity. When you start giving instead of being miserly or greedy, perhaps you have already leaned towards the other extreme and cultivated ideas of small financial matters. Perhaps you have nurtured poverty by maintaining ideas of cents rather than dollars or hundreds rather than thousands. You might think you cannot give because your income is modest or your offering is limited. Your remedies must cultivate ideas of abundance. Claim God as your inexhaustible resource, that everything is yours. But to release the accumulated energy of your thought, you must also start giving. At first, you may only be able to offer cents, but give them in the name and spirit of your opulent God. Send them with all the love from your heart, and say to them as they go, "Divine love through me blesses and multiplies you." Your consciousness is like a stream. If the current is blocked in any way, the water settles in all low places and stagnates. The quickest way to purify and claim the low and marshy places of your consciousness is to let in the upper current by opening the valve. Many people try to demonstrate that God is a source of supply by repeating affirmations of present abundance, but they fail to deny and thus release the old condition and old belief in scarcity by starting to give as generously as possible. It's not the quantity you give by worldly standards, it's the goodwill you send as a gift, which can only be measured by spiritual standards. God loves the joyful giver. The Greek word translated here as joyful is hilarium, which truly means hilarious, joyful. Giving can be measured in dollars and cents, but God doesn't look at such criteria. He looks at and loves the joyful giver. Therefore, let us keep the words of this covenant and put them into practice to prosper in all that we do. Blessings can be deposited in our gifts. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies this offering. The Father gives abundantly. I receive with gratitude and give again with generosity. This is God's generosity. and I send it forth with wisdom and joy. Divine love generously provides and increases this offering. I give freely and without fear, respecting the law of giving and receiving. After the multitude had been fed with the multiplication of loaves and fishes, Jesus ordered the gathering of the fragments so that nothing would be wasted. Everyone ate and was satisfied, and they gathered the remaining pieces into 12 baskets full. Any form of waste is a violation of the divine law of conservation. In all nature, there is evidence of stored energy substance ready to be utilized when needed. This reserve force is not material, but spiritual. It stands ready to be invoked or expressed to meet any need. However, when this force is not used or called upon to express itself, it creates a manifestation of disharmony or lack, whether in a person's body or in their external supply. It is in the misconception of this spiritual force that man makes the mistake of accumulating rather than conserving. He tries to gather things externally in a vain effort to avoid an imaginary shortage in the future, and considers himself wealthy based on the quantity of his material possessions. Spiritually awakened individuals come to know that all spiritual riches are accessible to everyone as divine ideas. They study the law of conservation concerning the spiritual and seek to accumulate a great reserve consciousness of substance, life, strength, and power, rather than hoarding material treasures that rust and moths devour. Men and women expend their energies in all directions in the effort to satisfy carnal desires, then wonder why they do not manifest prosperity. If they understood that this same power of thought can be conserved and controlled to express itself through constructive channels, they would soon be prosperous. The mind must have substance to function, and there must be substance in the ideas of your mind. If your substance is scattered here and there, spent on unrestrained thoughts, how can you accumulate until it manifests in demonstration? Such squandering of substance is a violation of the law of conservation, a law that everyone should know. When you overcome your desire for dissipation, not only in manifest acts but also in inner desire, you will then begin to accumulate substance that must manifest as prosperity according to the law. One of the fundamental principles in the study of Christianity is that God's grand design is to make man a perfect being. Man is the apex of creation, made in the image and likeness of God, and endowed with total authority and dominion over his elemental thoughts. At times we think we must succeed in a professional field or occupation before being rich or famous. This is an error regarding God's high purpose, Christ Jesus, who demonstrates the divine idea of a perfect man. The true purpose of life is not to make money or become famous, but to build character, to develop the potentialities that exist within each of us. Part of the divine plan is the substantial provision by the Creator for all mental and physical needs of his creation. We do not study prosperity to become rich, but to bring forth those qualities essential to prosperity. We must learn to develop the faculty that will bring prosperity and character that does not deteriorate with prosperity. Faith is the faculty of the mind, dealing with the idea of universal substance. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. While everything in God is ideal without form, yet with all possibilities, he is omnipresent in our mind and body. It is in our body that we will bring God into visible manifestation. Faith is the faculty that grasps the idea of substance and makes it visible. The struggle for wealth seems to be the sole purpose of existence for some people. Writers of biblical times constantly preached against the love of money, yet Jehovah always promised wealth and honors to all who obeyed his commandments. The gold and silver he promised were spiritual and not material. God is spirit, and only spirit can give ideas. These ideas can be translated into terms of gold or anything else according to our thought. The true treasures worth preserving are those we keep in the heaven of the mind. The only gold that can be relied upon to bring happiness is the gold of the Spirit. Jesus said, I counsel thee to buy of me gold tried in the fire, that thou mayest be rich, and white raiment, that thou mayest be clothed, and that the shame of thy nakedness do not appear. Paul tells us that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evils. This means, of course, that by loving money, man has limited it in some way. He did not love the true source of money, but loved the thing instead of the spirit it expresses. He broke the law by seeking the thing without recognizing the idea behind it. We must know this law by observing it in the management of money and make love the magnet of giving rather than becoming ensnared in the selfishness and greed that cause so much disharmony and suffering in the present world. We must know that there is a universal monetary substance that belongs to all of us in its entirety. In the parable of the sower, Jesus uses a very striking phrase, "Some of the good seed was choked by the thorns." The thorns represent the deceitfulness of riches. Money is indeed deceitful. It promises ease and brings worry. It promises pleasures and pays with pain. It promises influence and returns jealousy and envy. It promises happiness and gives sadness. It promises permanence and then flies away. Metaphysically, it is better, or at least safer, to be poor than to be rich. Jesus taught this in the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. The rich man is depicted in torment, calling out to the poor man to give him a drop of water. But if the rich are miserable, the poor who desire to be rich are also miserable. Poverty and wealth are the two poles of a magnet, whose pivot is the belief that the possession of matter will bring joy to the possessor. This belief is deceitful, and those who are drawn by this belief and allow their minds to be hypnotized by the desire for material possessions must be pitied, whether their desire is fulfilled or not. The true possessor of wealth is one who feels that all things belong to him to be used and enjoyed, yet he does not cling to personal possession. Diogenes was a very happy man, even though he lived in a tub. His philosophy survived the influence of the rich and powerful, who were his contemporaries. He walked around at noon with a lantern looking for an honest man, for it seemed they were as rare in his time as in ours. However, the widespread desire to possess material goods indicates that there is something good in it. The natural man is of the soil, formed from the dust of the earth, and loves his native element. The spiritual man is from above, originating from the heavens of the spirit. He is given precedence, and as Jacob supplants the natural man, men should not regard the earth in this manner, but they should not love it to the exclusion of the heavens either. They must understand that substance is from the Father, who makes the body of his people. His heavenly Father knows that you need all these things, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. The divine law upholds that the earth is the Lord's in its fullness. If this truth were truly understood, men would immediately begin to render all goods available for the use and enjoyment of all. The early followers of Jesus understood this in their religion and demanded that they bring all their possessions and lay them at the feet of their leaders to be distributed and used according to everyone's needs. Barnabas, Paul's companion, gave his field. Ananias and Sapphira sold their lands and brought part of the price to Peter, but they kept part of it. They had not overcome the fear of future scarcity and had not fully placed their faith in the Master's teachings and promises. When we have recognized the truth of God's omnipresence as substance and supply for every need, there will be no occasion to withhold a portion as Ananias and Sapphira did. We cannot hoard money in its material phase without violating the law, which is that we have all the substance necessary for our supply. We ask the Lord for our daily bread and hope to receive it, but we do not seek to accumulate something that would spoil in our hands or deny the necessary to any other man. The metaphysical idea behind this part of the Lord's Prayer is, "Give us this day the substance of tomorrow's bread." We are not asking for bread, but for the substance of spirit, which is ready to manifest as bread, clothing, shelter, or any necessary supply. Substance in the form of money is given to us for constructive uses. It is given to us for us to utilize and meet an immediate need, not to hoard jealously or foolishly squander. When you have found the freedom of thought binding you to conserve money, do not turn to the opposite extreme of extravagant spending. Money must be used, not abused. It is good to pay one's obligations. It is good to have some money set aside for rightful uses, such as hospitality, education, the development of industries contributing to the good of many, to promote spiritual work, to help others build useful and constructive lives, and for many other purposes and activities. But in this conservation of money, one must always keep in mind the need for a constructive motive behind the action. Money accumulated for a defined and definitively constructive purpose is very different from money accumulated out of fear of a rainy day or a long season of scarcity and suffering. Money saved for rainy days is always used precisely for that, as fear invariably attracts what one fears. What I fear comes to me. Money saved as a fund of opportunities brings an increase of good, but money accumulated out of fear as a motive or any miserly thought in the mind cannot bring any blessing. Those who maintain the thought of accumulation so dominantly in today's world invite troubles, even catastrophe, for with that thought goes a strong affirmation of fear of losing wealth. Their actions indicate the fear and loss they dread, which will surely manifest sooner or later. The worldly idea of prosperity is based on the false idea of supply. One can have the right idea that the source of wealth is spiritual, yet have the wrong idea of the constancy of supply as spiritual substance always present and freely flowing. God does not clothe the lilies once and then leave them at the mercy of lack. He continually provides for their growth. We can be assured He will clothe us much more and keep us clothed day by day according to our needs. When we doubt this and place our reliance on accumulated money in its place, we shut off the flow of divine supply. Then, when our little accumulation is spent, stolen, or lost, we are like the prodigal child and begin to have needs. Jesus did not possess a single inch of land, yet He never lacked anything He needed. Without hoarding treasures on earth, He was rich in His consciousness of heavenly treasures within Himself, ready to be manifested outward whenever He needed. We know perfectly well that sooner or later we will have to part with our earthly goods. Does this evoke thoughts of death and leaving the world behind? It then shows the powerful hold that this racial belief of worldly belief has taken in your mind. Men may think of their material possessions only in relation to death. It seems they prefer death to giving up the idea of wealth. When they make such a choice, they decree what will befall them. That is why it is hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. He has accumulated treasures on earth and not enough in heaven. He did not allow his mind to cling to the positive pole of wealth. The true idea of wealth clings to the negative side of the idea of wealth, and this side always changes. Material things pass unless firmly connected to the immutable and positive source. True wealth and true prosperity lie in the understanding that there is an omnipresent substance from which all things emanate, and by the action of our minds, we can unite with this substance to create manifestations in line with our desires and needs. Instead of realizing the inexhaustible, eternal, and omnipresent nature of this substance, we have limited it in our thought. We have thought there is only a certain amount, and that it is better to hurry to get our share. We have thought we must be careful in how we spend it, and save a portion for when there is none left. By building this consciousness of limited supply, we have arrived at the conclusion that it is necessary to be thrifty and increasingly miserly. We have started pinching our minds, and then our money has become pinched. Because as we think in our minds, so we manifest our affairs. This pinched attitude blocks the channel through which our substance comes into manifestation and hinders the united flow of our supply. Then comes depression, hard times, scarcity, and we seek a way to blame the government, war, and even the Lord. But we never accidentally place the blame where it should be, on ourselves. The pinched attitude of the mind makes things worse, leading people to want. If people relax their minds, their nerves and muscles will also relax. They must learn the cause of their tense and miserly mental attitude, then release it first. Then, relief from the external condition will manifest as it has been with the condition itself. Almost everyone has been educated in the belief that thrift is something important, even a virtue. We must save our money and have a bank account. Saving money is the recipe for success many of our wealthy men recommend. It's not a bad idea. There must be money available in banks to conduct business and industry. By having a bank account, we contribute to the community's well-being. If we have the right idea that the Lord is our banker, the word miserly comes from the Latin root that also gives the word miserable. It describes the condition of those who love and hoard money, lands, or other material things. The stories told about misers are almost unbelievable, but almost every day, The press reports stories of the pitiful trials misers have reduced themselves to in order to increase their wealth. Sometimes, they die of hunger to add a few dollars or even cents to their hoarding. Newspapers recently published an article about a New York miser worth $11 million. He goes around the offices in one of his large office buildings and collects used paper from garbage cans, which he sells for a few cents. Another man, almost as wealthy, does not buy a coat but keeps his body warm by putting newspapers under his coat. These men are not only miserable themselves, but make everyone around them miserable. A New York journal talks about a miser who was worth millions when he died. Once, thieves entered his house but managed to leave without losing anything. You do not need to accumulate treasures for the future. When you know that the law of omnipresent good provides from within, evolving within your mind, you attract more and more good things in life to yourself. In your mind, see abundance everywhere, even though at times it might be difficult to overcome the thought that there isn't enough, as it is a subtle thought that has long been in consciousness. It can be done. It has been done, and others are doing it. The law of prosperity is not a theory but a demonstrated fact as testified by thousands of people. Now is the time to open your mind and see abundance. By doing so, you will notice an increase in your supply. Refuse to think of scarcity and affirm the abundance of all good. The infinite substance that the infinite Spirit has given you is now all around you, but you must grasp it. It's like air. You must breathe to receive it. It's yours to take, but you must take it. You should cultivate this wonderful power of the mind to know that everything is abundant, and this power to grasp the invisible substance of the Spirit and through faith, bring it into manifestation. Acknowledge, like Job, that we have as much now in reality and truth as we have ever had. There is no scarcity, lack, or depression with God. Do not be afraid no matter how external appearances affect others. Keep a level head when everyone around you loses theirs. Refuse to burden your mind with old material thoughts to the point of denying what you truly need. Eliminate old limiting ideas. Affirm your freedom and faith as a child of God. Do not spend foolishly and do not save foolishly. The farmer does not throw away his seed when he sows a field. You must know how much to sow per acre and not be stingy, for a scanty seed will bring a scanty harvest. Sow with abundance, but not with extravagance, and reap with abundance what you have sown. Whatever a man sows, he will also reap. He who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. He who sows generously will also reap generously. We cannot ignore that the so-called scarcity and hard times are the result of mental states. We have such things in the manifested world because men have not aligned their action with the divine principle. They did not use spiritual judgment when they acted and possessed. They get opinions from other men, sometimes from those who claim to be experts. Then comes the collapse, and even the experts show how little they understand the true laws of wealth. We can go to an expert who truly knows the law because he ordained it in the first place, and he is not far but within ourselves. We can go within ourselves and meditate on these things in silence, and the Lord will guide our personal finances. He will show us how to maximize and make the best of our money and ensure we have the supply we need so that nothing necessary is lacking for our good. This does not mean amassing wealth or keeping it for rainy days, but will secure our supply for today, the only day that truly exists. As we believe in God's consciousness as omnipresent life and substance, we no longer have to place our trust in accumulating money or other goods. We are assured that the need of each day will be met, and we deprive ourselves of today's pleasure and peace to provide for a totally imaginary future need. In this consciousness, our lives become divinely ordered, and there is balance in offerings and finances, just as in everything else. We do not deprive ourselves of what we need today, nor do we sensibly waste our substance or needlessly exhaust it. We do not wait or prepare for adversity in any way, for doing so not only invites it, but also shows doubt in God and all His promises. Many people carry burdens and deprive themselves for their own current necessity to prepare for dark days that never come. When we look back, we find that most of our fears were unfounded, and most of the things we feared never happened. However, the things for which we prepared have probably happened and found us not entirely prepared, even after all our efforts in that direction. This should enable us to trust God now and rest in the positive certainty that He will provide for every need as it arises. Things are never as bad as you believe. Never allow yourself to think that you suffer. You do not want such a mental structure, and you should not build it with such thoughts. You live in a new era. Yesterday is gone forever, today is here forever. Something greater for man is developing now. Get in tune with the progressive thought in the new era and move forward. Overcome the thought of scarcity. The kingdom of heaven is like a net thrown into the sea, gathering all kinds of fish. Once full, it is drawn onto the shore, and men sort out what is good into containers and throw away what is bad. The mind of man is like a net that catches all kinds of ideas, and it is man's privilege and duty according to the divine law to separate the good from the bad. In this process, the currents of spiritual love and synthesis flowing through the soul act as great eliminators, freeing consciousness from thoughts of hatred, lack, and poverty, and giving the substance of spirit free access to consciousness and affairs. In silent meditation and speaking, the superconsciousness in your mind discerns between the kinds of food you assimilate, controls your digestion, breathing, and the beats of your heart. It does all things well and will help you accomplish this important work of directing the thoughts you must entertain and those you must reject. As you develop this mind within you, you will find that you can gradually hand over more and more of your affairs to this perfect discrimination. Nothing is too great for it to succeed, and nothing is too trivial for it to handle with perfection and swiftness. This spiritual intelligence will guide you perfectly, even in the smallest details of your life, if you allow it. But you must desire to do His will and trust Him in all your ways. It will infallibly guide you to health, happiness, and prosperity, as it has done and does with thousands of people, as long as you follow it. So, it is necessary to get rid of old thoughts and conditions once they have served their purpose, just as appropriating new ideas and creating new conditions to meet our needs. In fact, we cannot grasp new ideas and create new conditions until we have made room for them by eliminating the old. We will have to do this with fewer sheep. If we insist on filling the vessels with bad fish, we will have to do without the good ones. We learn that thoughts are things and take up space in the mind. We cannot have new or better thoughts in a place already cluttered with old, weak and inefficient thoughts. A mental house cleaning is much more necessary than the material one, for the outside is but a reflection of the inside. Clean the inside of the plate where the food is kept as well as the outside that people see. Jesus taught that old thoughts must be denied and the mind must be cleansed in preparation before the affirmative consciousness of Christ can enter our minds. Even our bodies are laden with erroneous thoughts. Each cell is wrapped in thought. Each cell has its own mind. By using denial, we break the outer crust, the material thought that envelops the cells, and we descend to the substance and life within them. Then, we come into contact with this substance and life that our denials have uncovered, and through them, we express the positive and constructive side of the law. When we systematically begin to deny material limitations, we begin to reveal the spiritual that waits within to be manifested. When this law is revealed in our consciousness, we start using it to demonstrate all things that are good. This is the state of consciousness that Jesus had, the consciousness of Christ. Each man has a definite work to do in the realization of the divine law of spiritual evolution. The law is put into action by our thought and is continually sustained by our thought while developing our soul. Within us are the great potentials of the mind that, when put into action, enable us to be, do, or have whatever we desire. Consciousness tells us that each of us has enough energy within himself to direct a universe if we knew how to release and control it. We release this by a process of letting go and taking, by releasing the old, or what has fulfilled its role and is no longer useful, and by accepting new ideas and inspirations that come from the superconscious mind. Jesus told Peter that what he bound on earth would be bound in heaven, and what he loosed on earth would be loosed in heaven. He wasn't speaking of a geographical place or a defined place in the heavens called heaven, but he was explaining to Peter the law of the Spirit. The conscious mind is nothing more than the negative pole of a very positive realm of thought. Jesus called this positive realm of thought the kingdom of heaven. It's not a place at all, but the free activity of man's superconscious mind. Whatever we bind or limit on earth in the conscious mind will be bound or limited in the ideal or heavenly realm, and whatever we release and liberate in the conscious mind on earth will be released and liberated in the ideal, the heavenly. In other words, what you affirm or deny in your conscious mind determines the character of the activities of the superconsciousness. All power is given to you, both in heaven and on earth, through your thought. We must carefully choose which thoughts we will release into the mind and which thoughts we will retain, for they will manifest in our affairs. As a man thinks within himself, so he is, and whatever a man sows in the mind, that he will also reap in manifestation. We must release all thoughts of lack and insufficiency in the mind and let them go, as Jesus ordered to be done with the bandages that held Lazarus. Release them and let them go. Release all thoughts of lack and lean on thoughts of abundance. Look upon the abundance of all goods prepared for you and for us all since the foundation of the world. We live in an ocean of inexhaustible substance, ready to manifest when shaped by our thought. Some individuals are like fish in the sea, asking where the water is in the presence of spiritual abundance. They cry, "Where will I find money? How will I pay my bills? Will we have food, clothing, or necessities?" Abundance is everywhere. And once you have opened the eyes of your inner mind, you will see it and rejoice. We pattern the omnipresent substance with our minds and make all things that our minds conceive. If we conceive lack and poverty, we pattern it. If we envision with a generous eye, we pattern abundance from the ever-present substance. Perhaps there is no step more important in spiritual development than the one we are talking about here. We must learn to let go, to relinquish, to make room for the things we have prayed and desired for. This is called sacrifice or elimination, which may even seem to some people to be simply abandoning and rejecting the old thoughts that have brought us to where we are and putting in their place new ideas promising to better our condition. If the new ideas do not fulfill this promise, we discard them in turn for others, trusting that we will eventually find the right ideas that will bring what we desire. We always want something better than what we have. It's the impulse of progress, development, and growth. Just as children outgrow their clothes, we outgrow our ideals and ambitions, expanding our horizon of life as we move forward. There must be constant elimination of the old to keep pace with this growth. When we cling to old ideals, we hinder our progress, even halting it altogether. Metaphysicians speak of this work of elimination as denial. Denial is often the first step. It sweeps away the debris and leaves space for the new tenant brought to the mind by affirmation. It would not be wise to eliminate the old thoughts unless we knew that there are other higher and better thoughts to take their place. But we need not fear this, because we know the divine truth that God is the source of all good, and that all good things can be ours through the love and grace of Jesus Christ. None of us has reached that supreme level of consciousness where he entirely forsakes the material man and lives in the spirit as Jesus did. But we have a concept of that life and its example that show it can be attained. We will attain it when we escape the mortal. This does not mean that we must die to free ourselves from mortality, for that is only a state of consciousness. We die daily and are reborn by replacing the thought that we are material with the truth that we are spiritual. One of the great discoveries of modern science is that every atom in this so-called material universe possesses within it superabundant vital elements, divine life and spirit. We release this quality of spiritual life by denying the crust of materiality that surrounds the cells and by affirming that they are spirit and life. This is the new birth, first in the form of conception in the mind, followed by realization in the body and affairs. We all want better economic conditions. Here's how to get them. Deny the old thoughts of lack of money and affirm the new thought of spiritual abundance manifesting everywhere. Each choice in the scripture illustrates a phase of mental action and can be applied to every individual life according to the most pressing need at the time of its perception. If you do not seek the mental choice when reading the scripture, you only get the mere outer envelope of truth. However, if you correctly understand the characters in the narrative, knowing they represent ideas in your own mind, you can follow them in your various movements and find the way to solve all problems in your life. This doesn't mean that studying written scriptures will automatically solve your problems unless you reach an understanding of the true scriptures, the Bible of ages, the book of life within your own consciousness. But a study of external symbols as given in the writings can and should give you an understanding of the truth of being. In every person, we find conflicting ideas represented by the children of Israel and the Philistines in conflict day and night. We call these opposing thoughts truth and error. When we awaken spiritually, we align ourselves with truth, knowing that thoughts of truth are the elects of the Lord, the children of Israel. But thoughts of error sometimes seem so real, so formidable, that we tremble and are afraid in their presence. We know that truth will eventually prevail, but we postpone this victory to a future time and say that error is so great and strong that we cannot confront it now. We will wait until we have gathered more strength. So, we must remain still and affirm the salvation of the Lord. Not all ideas hold the same importance. Some are great and strong, others are small and weak. There are aggressive and dominant ideas that display their power and threaten us with disasters to make us yield to their malevolent kingdom. These dominant ideas of error always have an argument they use to impress us: the fear of outcomes. We dare not confront them openly, even though we know they are wrong. This sense of fear seems to be interwoven into our own mental fabric. This fear is symbolized by Goliath's spear, which, as the story goes, was like a weaver's beam. What is the most dreaded thought in the minds of men today? It's not the power of money, it's not the greatest Philistine, it's Goliath in their consciousness. It's the same whether you're on the side of the Philistines and succeeding financially from a material perspective, or if you're with the Israelites and trembling in your poverty. The daily appearance of this giant Goliath, the power of money, is something greatly feared. Neither the Philistines nor the Israelites possess the promised land. Neither is at peace, happy, or secure, as long as this dominant giant displays its strength and boasts. This false idea asserts that it is stronger than the Lord of Israel. It must be felled before all other erroneous thoughts are expelled from your consciousness, and the consciousness of abundance, the promised land of milk and honey, can enter. The entire world trembles before this gigantic idea of error, the belief that money is the dominant power. The nations of the world are under this reign because men think that money is power. Both the rich and the poor are slaves to this idea. The kings and the great of the earth bow down and diminish themselves before the kings of money. It's because man has given power to money through his mistaken thought. He has made a golden calf and now bows down to worship it instead of making it his servant. He called it master and became its slave. The government of this mad giant has been disastrous, and its end is rapidly approaching. The first step to eliminate this arrogant giant from your mind is to have a clear perception of your right as a child of God. You know that you should not oppose other gods or powers to the true God. You also know that you should be under the domination of nothing in the heavens or on the earth, for dominion over all has been given to you. You will never find a better time to realize the truth of who you are, and what your rights are. There has never been a more opportune moment to seek a new and better state of consciousness. If you fear the boastful Philistine giant as many around you do, begin now to seek a path as David did, to offer his flesh to the birds of the air. There is a path, a right path that cannot fail, and it is your duty to find it. Follow every step of the path, symbolically and beautifully laid out in chapter 17 of the first book of Kings. The name David means the beloved of the Lord, and David represents your rightful perception of your privileges as a child of God. You are no slave to anything or anyone in the universe. The threat of this Goliath, the power of money, holds no terror for you in this consciousness. You have a gentle perception of truth, and you hurl it straight to the center of his carnal thought. His forehead, the weight of his shield and armor, do not intimidate you because you see them for what they are. An empty and meaningless spectacle, vulnerable to real ideas with which you are armed. Even the staunchest defenders of the power of money will admit that it is a tyrant and that they would not let it rule their world if they could. Ultimately, it almost always destroys its friends. Any man who becomes a slave to money eventually gets crushed by it. On the other hand, There are entire armies of righteous people, Christians, who, like the army of Israel, believe this giant cannot be defeated. They await reinforcements, something greater and physically stronger to overcome this enemy. They forget that the battle belongs to the Lord. You cower before this giant when he comes out daily to impress you with his boasting and threats. It doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to continue to fear. There is a small idea in your mind that can defeat him. Perhaps you haven't considered this small idea as being very important. Maybe you've kept it in the solitary fridge of your spiritual consciousness, tending to the sheep that are your innocent thoughts. Now let this David emerge, this perception of your rightful place in the divine mind. Make yourself a clear idea of your true place in creation and your privileges. Do you for a moment think that God has ordained men to be unable to escape the terrible bondage of difficult conditions? Of course not, that would be unjust, and God is above all just. It is your privilege to step out at any time and accept the challenge of this Pharaoh. The Lord has been with you in the slaughter of fear, sin and disease, of the bear and the lion, and he will always be with you in the battle against the fear of poverty, symbolized by Goliath. The battle is the Lord's, and he is with us to deliver us from the hand of the Philistines. The weapons of the Lord are not carnal. He does not wage war in the manner of the world. He does not use armor of steel or bronze, the protection of selfishness, and the weapons of oppression. He goes with the simplicity of justice, knowing that his innocence is his defense. He uses only his shepherd's sling and smooth stones, words of truth. It's the will and the words of will that send the Philistines away, and many mock the idea of using words to overcome conditions. But the words do their job, the job for which they are sent, and the great mass of materiality yields before their assured purpose. We know that money was made for man and not man for money. No man should be the slave of his brother, of man, or bow down before him to gain money, which is the servant of all alike. We are not attached to the wheel of toil, of unceasing effort day after day to appease the God of wealth on his own terms. We are the children of the living God, who as a loving Father is here. In our midst, where we can claim him as our support and resource, in the conditions he reveals with love, when we have recognized him and rejected that day, Jehovah has delivered this proud Philistine into our hands, and victory is ours. Praised be God. 5 smooth stones chosen by David from the brook represent 5 irrefutable statements of truth. These affirmations, sent forth by a consciousness sure of its cause and spiritual strength, will crush Goliath's forehead, the giant of error. The statements are as follows. I am the beloved of the Lord. He is with me in all my righteous words, and they accomplish what they are sent for. My cause is just, for it is my divine right to receive all that the Father has provided for his children. I dissolve in my own consciousness, and in that of others, any thought that what is mine can be withheld. What belongs to me comes to me by God's sure law, and in my clear perception of truth, I welcome it. I fear not poverty, and am under obligation to none. My rich Father has poured upon me all resources, and I am a mighty channel of abundance. I possess nothing selfishly, but all things in existence are mine to use with divine wisdom and grant to others. Do not remain in poverty for fear of lack, and by practicing a stingy economy. If you believe that all the Father has is yours, then there is no reason to withhold anything. Nothing will expand your mind and world as much as the understanding that everything is yours when you realize the limitlessness of your spiritual heritage. Nothing will be lacking in your world. Look with the generous eye, for he who has a generous eye will be blessed. This passage establishes a precise law, the law of increase. Religious leaders of the past spread the belief that it is the Christian's duty to be poor and that poverty is a virtue. This is not at all Jesus' doctrine. He fully accepted without reservations or hesitation the proposition that God is our resource and that the Father has provided all things for his children. He is often described as poor, with no place to lay his head. And yet he had a paternal home in Nazareth and was warmly welcomed into the homes of the rich and poor throughout Palestine. He dressed like a rabbi, and his clothes were so rich and precious that Roman soldiers coveted the seamless robe he wore and cast lots for it. He found abundance in the kingdom of God, where all necessities manifest, not through hard labor, but through the realization of truth. Jesus rarely needed money because he reduced money to the idea it represented and dealt with money in the realm of idea. Our government stands behind all our paper dollars, or else they would have no value. God is behind every material symbol, and it is in God and not in the symbol that we should place our faith. He is behind our call for food and clothing and anything else we might need or desire. Jesus said all we have to do is ask in faith and in his name, believing we receive, and we shall have, and we should not hesitate to ask for much, because God can give much as easily as a little. Thank you very much for your visit.